Welcome to From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers. A podcast brought to you by College Recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career, and hosted by Work Defined. Join our AI co-hosts as they dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Let's get your career started.
Usually when we talk about a job search, there's this underlying expectation of just total precision. Like we treat it exactly like a video game.
Oh, absolutely. Like you hit a checkpoint.
Right, exactly. You submit the polished resume, and that is a checkpoint.
Yeah.
You navigate the tricky behavioral interview, boom, another checkpoint. You negotiate the salary, sign the offer letter, and it is basically level complete. Mm-hmm. You just sit back and wait for the confetti to fall from the ceiling.
Yeah. And I mean, it is incredibly comforting to view it that way. We deeply crave that binary structure, because the job market itself is just so chaotic.
Oh, for sure. It's a mess out there.
Right. So categorizing the search into these predictable, highly visible milestones, well, it gives us this illusion of control over a process that is, at its core, an exercise in profound vulnerability.
But then you step out of the candidate's shoes, right?
Right.
And you step into the actual reality of how hiring managers or recruiters and executives make their actual decisions.
And the whole thing falls apart.
It shatters completely. The video game logic is just gone. The checkpoints are a total facade. Because the reality is that the moment you hit apply or, the second you walk out of an interview room, you are entering this hidden diagnostic landscape.
Right. The test is running when you think the console is turned off.
Exactly. The employers are evaluating you precisely when you think the test is paused.
And that disconnect between those two perspectives, that is exactly where careers stall. I mean, candidates focus all their energy on the performance, the 45 minutes on the Zoom call.
The rehearsed part.
Right, the script.
Yeah.
But leadership teams are looking at literally everything else. They are evaluating the spaces in between the performances to see the unscripted professional.
So to dig into this, we've got a really fascinating stack of insights today, gathered by College Recruiter. And this material, it cuts straight through all that generic, high school guidance counselor advice because it comes directly from the top.
Yeah, these are not hypotheticals.
Not at all. We are unpacking firsthand observations from actual CEOs, startup founders, and business psychologists. And they are all pointing to the exact same massive vulnerability that trips up everyone from recent graduates to highly seasoned professionals making career pivots.
And it is so wild because the fatal mistakes, they aren't happening during the milestones.
Nope.
They are happening in the aftermath. The source material is essentially an autopsy of self-sabotage.
I love that phrase. An autopsy of self-sabotage.
Because it details how these highly qualified, technically brilliant people, they execute the visible steps flawlessly, only to just completely unravel their own candidacy in the shadows.
So let's explore the central concept that kind of ties all of these executive insights together.
Yeah.
Because the text refers to it as the white space.
The white space, yes.
Right. So this is the silence after you submit an application. It's the weird waiting period after the final round of interviews, or, it's those 3 long weeks between signing the offer letter and your actual start date.
Right. And if we borrow a concept from, say, art or design, think about negative space. The empty space around a subject is what actually gives the subject its shape and definition.
Like the FedEx logo with the hidden arrow.
Exactly. Or think about sheet music, the rests. The moments of absolute silence between the notes are what actually create the rhythm.
That makes total sense.
And the white space in a job search functions the exact same way.
Right.
As a candidate, your immediate instinct is to view the white space as downtime. You hit submit, you exhale, you step back.
You think it's their turn.
Right. You view it as this necessary pause where the burden of action shifts entirely over to the employer.
But the people actually holding the hiring budget, they definitely do not see a pause.
Not at all. To a recruiter or a hiring manager, the white space is a high-definition broadcast of your actual working style.
Because you aren't acting anymore.
Exactly. When you aren't rehearsing an answer to what is your greatest weakness, or when you aren't rigidly formatting a bullet point on a PDF, how do you actually manage ambiguity? How proactive are you? How do you communicate when there is no immediate pressing deadline? That white space is the real evaluation.
And the article introduces a metaphor for this that I think completely reframes the entire process for you. They call it the reputation runway.
It's a brilliant term.
It really is. Because the traditional thinking is that your professional reputation at a new company, well, it starts forming at like 9 a.m. on your first day. You know, when you walk in, you shake hands, you get your laptop from IT.
The onboarding day.
Right. But this material argues that your reputation runway starts forming the absolute millisecond you hit send on that initial application.
Because the runway is where you build the necessary momentum to actually take off, to secure political and social capital in a new role.
But it's also where you can crash the plane before the wheels ever leave the ground, right?
Oh, entirely.
Yeah.
The executives we are analyzing today make it abundantly clear that mishandling the silence, well, it can permanently damage your credibility before you have even swiped a badge at the front door.
Which is exactly why understanding the mechanics of this runway is the ultimate shortcut for you, the listener, if you are navigating the job market today. Like if you are mentoring a junior colleague, or if you are attempting a massive industry pivot, or if you are just trying to understand why you keep stalling out at that final interview stage, mastering the white space is the absolute differentiator.
Because you could possess the most elite credentials on paper, but if you go passive in the white space, you will inevitably lose the offer.
To someone less qualified.
Yes, to someone with half your technical skill who simply understands how to manage the silence. Managing that silence, it demonstrates a level of professional maturity and situational awareness that companies are just desperate for right now.
Especially in like highly collaborative or remote environments, right?
Yeah.
Where managers cannot physically monitor your engagement every day.
Exactly. Remote work has made the white space even more critical.
And the craziest part is that this runway, this critical period of really intense judgment, it begins precisely when the candidate feels the most productive. Like, it begins the moment you interact with the modern hiring machine.
The dreaded job board.
Yeah. So let's look at the first major draft our sources identify. And this is the silence that immediately follows the application.
Right. The text highlights this universal frustration from leadership regarding what we could call the click submit culture.
Yes, and we see this heavily in the insights from Farouk Muzaffar. So he's the CMO, co-founder, and a business strategist at Quantum Jobs USA.
A guy who sees a lot of resumes.
Thousands of them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he specifically targets this behavior of going completely dark after applying. Because the modern workflow is, well, you find a listing on LinkedIn, or indeed you attach the PDF, you click the big blue button, and then you just move on to the next one.
The easy apply button.
Exactly. But Muzaffar says something here that really stops you in your tracks. He notes that job applications are not meant to be simply click submitted.
And that phrase, click submitted, it just perfectly encapsulates the completely frictionless reality of the digital job hunt today. I mean, technology has optimized the application process to the point of total absurdity.
It's too easy.
It really is. A candidate can have their profile and their resume cached on a platform and just fire off 50 applications in a single afternoon without ever actually reading the job descriptions in full.
Because it provides this massive dopamine hit. Like, you spend an hour clicking easy apply, and your brain registers that as a highly productive afternoon. You think, wow, I am really advancing my career today.
But the psychological disconnect that creates is just staggering, because the applicant begins to view the submission as a purely transactional exchange. You know, I upload my data into your portal, and the algorithm owes me an interview.
Like buying a pair of shoes online.
Right. It mirrors the exact experience of e-commerce. You put the item in the digital cart, you click checkout, and you expect the package to arrive on your porch. But Farouk Muzaffar is highlighting a fundamental truth about corporate hiring here. Employers do not view hiring as a transaction.
They view it as an investment.
A massive investment. They view it as the initiation of a high-stakes, long-term relationship. And relationships, by definition, are sustained by mutual effort.
And Muzaffar explicitly states that applications require effort, follow-up, and communication to facilitate a complete process.
He's essentially arguing that the resume is just the cover page. The actual application is the context and the behavior that you wrap around that document.
And the definition of effort is where the two sides completely talk past each other. This is fascinating.
How so?
Well, from the applicant's perspective, condensing 10 years of complex career history into a beautifully formatted one-page PDF, that feels like monumental effort.
Oh yeah, they agonize over the font choice, the action verbs, the margins. It takes days. Exactly. But from the employer's side, receiving that PDF is not effort.
It's just data.
Receiving a PDF is the absolute bare minimum requirement for entry. It is literally just a ticket to stand in the line. Muzaffar observes that it is incredibly rare for a candidate to reach out and actually attempt to communicate outside the confines of that automated portal.
So because it is so rare, the silence translates directly into a perceived lack of care.
Yes. The silence says, I don't actually care about you. I just want a job.
And Stephen Liu, the CEO of Pin.com, he brings some stark numerical reality to this specific problem. He points out that hiring teams aren't just looking at your beautifully formatted resume in a vacuum. Like, they are sitting in a conference room looking at 5 to 10 candidates who have nearly identical professional backgrounds.
And that realization that you are not a unique variable on paper, that is a very difficult pill for a lot of candidates to swallow.
It hurts the ego a bit.
It does, but think about it. If a company is hiring a mid-level project manager, they are looking at a stack of finalists who all have their PMP certification, right? They all have 5 years of experience in agile environments, and they all know the exact same industry jargon.
So they basically cancel each other out on paper.
The paper credentials absolutely cancel each other out, so it comes down to behavior.
So the obvious question for you, listening to this, is how does a hiring committee break a 10-way tie of identical clones? Stephen Liu provides a highly actionable remedy here. He says the ultimate differentiator is a short, specific note sent within 24 hours of applying.
And the timing there, that is the critical mechanism. The 24-hour window demonstrates immediate, highly focused intent. It separates the candidate from the automated resume spammers who are just playing a numbers game.
But the content of the note is where I think people get tripped up. Because Liu stresses that it cannot just be a digital wave hello. Like, it could be an email to the hiring manager if you can scrape their address, or a connection request on LinkedIn. But it must articulate exactly what interested the candidate in the role.
Right. A generic, please review my application, is absolutely not going to cut it.
No.
The note has to serve as proof of research. A candidate who can articulate a specific draw, perhaps they read about a recent strategic acquisition the company made, or they admire a specific shift in the company's market positioning, that proves their application was a deliberate choice.
I was an accident.
Exactly. It proves to Stephen Liu that the candidate didn't just click the button because it was in front of them while they were eating lunch. They applied because their specific career trajectory aligns with his company's specific current problems.
Wait, hold on. Because I am looking at Farouk Muzaffar's specific suggestions for this follow-up.
Yeah.
And he actually suggests candidates should ask questions like, how did my application look? Or what are the next steps?
Right.
Now, if I do that to a busy chief marketing officer, aren't I just going to come across as incredibly needy? I mean, I feel like asking an executive to grade my resume or narrate the hiring process, to me, is just adding unnecessary friction to their inbox. It feels really presumptuous.
That fear, the fear of being a nuisance, is incredibly common. And it is the exact reason why 95% of candidates choose the safety of silence. They equate professionalism with being entirely invisible until called upon.
That's what we're taught, right? Speak when spoken to.
But we have to fundamentally misunderstand empathy in the context of the job search.
What do you mean?
Well, candidates think empathy means protecting the hiring manager's inbox from one extra email. Oh, I don't want to bother them. True empathy is understanding the actual psychological burden the hiring manager is carrying.
What is that burden, though, if not a flooded inbox?
The burden is severe decision fatigue coupled with extreme risk aversion.
Risk aversion. Okay, let's unpack that.
When a manager makes a bad hire, the cost isn't just the salary, it's the wasted onboarding time. It's the massive disruption to team morale. It's the missed quarterly targets. And crucially, it's the damage to the manager's own internal reputation for bringing in a poor performer.
Wow, yeah. They look bad to their boss.
Exactly. They are terrified of hiring a mercenary. Someone who looks fantastic on paper, but views the job merely as a temporary paycheck and will jump ship the moment a slightly better offer appears on LinkedIn.
So they're looking for loyalty before day one.
Yes. So when Muzaffar suggests asking, what are the next steps? Well, we shouldn't take that absolutely literally. He isn't asking the candidate to demand a personalized critique of their formatting. He is desperately searching for a signal of genuine enthusiasm.
The literal text of the question matters way less than the behavior of asking it.
Exactly.
It's the fact that you cared enough to initiate contact in a world where no one initiates contact.
By initiating contact, you break the fourth wall of the digital hiring algorithm. You step out of the automated applicant tracking system, and you introduce yourself as a human being who is highly invested in this specific outcome.
Which a spammer would never do.
A candidate who is mass applying to 100 jobs a day will never remember to follow up with a targeted email 24 hours later, The follow-up is a filter for intent.
That makes so much sense. It's almost like proof of memory. It says to the manager, I know who you are. I know the nuances of what I applied for, and my interest hasn't decayed overnight.
Precisely.
In fact, Farouk goes so far as to say, and this is a quote, if an applicant submits an application and shows support towards their application, I would feel grateful.
Grateful.
Yeah, grateful. That is an incredibly strong emotional word for a hiring manager to use about a candidate reaching out. You wouldn't think they'd be grateful.
But it reveals how starved leadership is for authentic engagement. They are drowning in a sea of perfectly optimized, completely soulless applications generated by AI.
Right, everyone has ChatGPT write their cover letter now.
Exactly. So when a candidate actually shows up with a pulse, a specific interest, and the proactive energy to drive the conversation forward, it doesn't feel like an annoyance to the manager. It feels like a massive relief.
So the real takeaway for you from this first phase of the white space is that the click submit mentality is a total trap. The application is merely the introduction, but the follow-up note is the actual handshake.
Beautifully put.
So if you master that initial follow-up, you elevate yourself out of the slush pile and you secure the interview. But, and this is the critical pivot here, once you secure that interview, the rules of the white space change completely.
They absolutely do.
A completely different dynamic opens up the exact moment
Yeah.
you log off that Zoom call or walk out of their corporate lobby.
Because the reputation runway becomes significantly more complex here. You are no longer dealing with the abstract idea of a company. You have now interacted with the specific human beings who hold the keys to your career. You know their names, their faces, their communication styles. The expectations for how you manage the silence shift dramatically.
So let's explore this post-interview phase. You've navigated the gauntlet. You wore the right clothes. You answered the behavioral questions using the STAR method perfectly. You ask smart questions at the end. You get home. The adrenaline fades. You open your laptop and you type out the standard post-interview thank you email.
The classic template.
Right. And according to the text, this is where candidates commit a massive unforced error. The trap here is sending the generic, "It was great to meet you, looking forward to hearing from you" message.
Stephen Liu from pin.com targets this exact moment. He explicitly states that after an interview, the nature of the mistake evolves. It's no longer about radio silence like in the application phase. It's about reverting to generic pleasantries.
Which is almost worse.
His assessment is harsh, but it's really necessary. He states unequivocally that a message saying, "It was great to meet you," just doesn't land.
I like to think of it as the equivalent of throwing a wet paper towel at a brick wall. Like, it just slides right off, leaving zero impact. But we really have to examine why that is. Because from the time we are children, we are taught the etiquette of the thank you note. After your birthday, you write a thank you note.
Right, it's deeply ingrained.
Isn't a prompt, polite email the absolute definition of professionalism?
Well, politeness is a baseline requirement, not a competitive advantage. Ooh, that's a great distinction.
Right. Being polite doesn't win the offer when the other three finalists are equally polite. A generic thank you note is simply a read receipt. It confirms the meeting took place, and that's it.
It's table stakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Liu explains that the candidates who actually leave a lasting impression, the ones who cement their position at the very top of the callback list, they utilize a very specific formula for their follow-up. The communication must reference a highly specific moment from the interview, and crucially, it must add a completely new thought to the ongoing dialogue. A new thought. Okay, let's build a metaphor for this to really illustrate the mechanism for everyone listening, because this is vital. Think about the interview itself as the first half of a really complex movie.
Okay, I like this.
You are establishing the setting, you're introducing the characters, and you are revealing the central conflict the company is currently facing. The follow-up email cannot simply be a review that says, "I enjoyed the movie."
5 stars.
Right. The follow-up email has to act as the sequel. It has to take the established plot and actively build upon it.
The sequel metaphor captures the essence of it perfectly. Let's apply this to a complex corporate scenario just to ground it.
Yes, let's do it.
Imagine you are interviewing for a role in, say, supply chain management. During the interview, the director of operations mentions in passing that they are really struggling with unpredictable bottlenecks from a specific overseas vendor.
A very common problem.
Right. Now, a generic wet paper towel note says, "Thank you for the time. I really enjoyed learning about your supply chain challenges."
Which adds zero value and requires zero cognitive effort. You just parroted back what they said.
Exactly zero. Now, a sequel note, however, looks like this. I really appreciated our deep dive into the vendor bottlenecks. After I left, I was considering how my previous team handled a similar geopolitical disruption. I've attached a brief outline of a dual sourcing framework we implemented that reduced our delay variance by 15%. I'd love to explore how we could adapt a version of that for your current Q3 pipeline.
Wow. That is a stunning difference.
It's night and day.
You aren't just thanking them for their time.
Yeah.
You are actively demonstrating how your brain operates on their behalf. You just proved that you didn't compartmentalize the interview and stop thinking about their business the second the Zoom call ended.
Right. You are already mentally working for them, providing tangible value before you are even on the payroll.
You are basically transitioning your identity from candidate being evaluated to consultant offering solutions.
Exactly. You're showing them the specific intellectual machinery you're going to bring to the office every single day. You're giving them a preview.
But as we dive deeper into the insights from these executives, we encounter a piece of advice that is, honestly, genuinely shocking to me. It goes against every instinct that job seekers has ever been taught.
Yes, the Fironov advice.
Yes. We hear from George Fironov. He's the co-founder and CEO of Telmatic. He proposes a strategy for this post-interview white space that is almost dangerously bold. Like, he advises candidates to use the follow-up email to explicitly address gaps or weaknesses that were identified during the interview.
It's wild. When you consider the psychology of an interview, Fironov's advice completely subverts standard human defense mechanisms.
Totally.
Because the interview environment inherently triggers an imposter syndrome response in almost everyone. When a candidate stumbles on a complex technical question or, is forced to admit they lack experience with a vital software platform, the immediate psychological instinct is concealment.
We want to sweep it under the rug. Like, if I'm interviewing for a data analytics role and I have to admit I've never used a specific visualization tool they rely on, the absolute last thing I want to do is put that failure in writing.
It feels incredibly counterintuitive.
Following up with, hey, just a reminder, I have absolutely no idea how to use your primary software. It feels like career suicide. It feels like I'm doing the rejection work for them.
The instinct to hide the flaw is so powerful, but it relies on a completely flawed assumption. The assumption that the interviewer will simply forget about it.
Which they won't.
They absolutely won't. Fironov is pointing out that the interviewer hasn't forgotten. That gap in your experience is written in red ink on the evaluation sheet sitting on their desk right now. By choosing to ignore it in your follow-up, you are not erasing the problem.
You're just hiding from it.
You are abandoning the narrative. You're leaving the interviewer to assume the worst possible conclusions about your silence.
Which are what? Exactly. Like that I was trying to hide it on purpose.
They will assume one of two things. Either they assume you don't even realize how critical that software is to the role, which demonstrates a profound lack of self-awareness.
Like you're clueless.
Right. Or they assume you do realize it's a problem, but you have absolutely no proactive plan to overcome it, which demonstrates a lack of initiative. Both of those assumptions are fatal to your candidacy.
So silence equals incompetence or laziness.
Basically, yes. Fironov is advising candidates to run directly toward the fire. He specifically notes that the failure to address these gaps proactively is a major missed opportunity.
So by bringing it up yourself, you are taking absolute control over how that specific weakness is perceived by the committee.
You are neutralizing the threat by contextualizing it.
Let's give an example of that.
Sure. If we return to the data visualization example, instead of hiding, you write a follow-up that says something like, during our technical deep dive, it became clear that my exposure to your specific visualization tool is limited. Recognizing that this is a critical component of the daily workflow, I wanted to let you know that I have already secured access to the platform and enrolled in an intensive project-based certification course this weekend to close that gap before a potential start date.
Wow. That is brilliant because it completely short-circuits the interviewer's concern.
Right in its tracks.
You aren't just acknowledging the gap, you are actively destroying the gap in real time. It signals an almost intimidating level of self-awareness. It proves that you are highly coachable. And above all else, it screams professional maturity.
Because the underlying mechanism here is about risk reduction for the manager. Hiring managers know that the perfect candidate doesn't exist.
It's a myth.
Exactly. They expect entry-level hires, and especially career pivoters, to have blind spots. They are not hiring for a state of flawless perfection. They are hiring for trajectory and problem-solving velocity. Fear enough's strategy turns a glaring negative into a live demonstration of your resilience.
Because you're giving them a free, high-fidelity sample of how you actually react to failure. Like, if you are hired and you hit a massive roadblock on a random Tuesday afternoon regarding a huge client deliverable, the manager needs to know how you will react.
That's the real test.
Are you going to hide the failure until the deadline passes and everything explodes? Or are you going to walk into their office and say, here is the critical issue, here is where my knowledge ran out, and here are the 3 steps I'm taking right now to fix it?
And that is the exact parallel the executives are drawing here. The reputation runway isn't simply a highlight reel of your best moments. It is a real-world stress test of your authenticity and capability when the script breaks down. Addressing the gap proves that your ego will not get in the way of the company's success.
Man, that is powerful. Okay, so let's assume the candidate executes this perfectly. You send the targeted 24-hour note to get the interview. Check. You treat the interview follow-up like a movie sequel, adding brilliant new insights. Check. You boldly address your technical gaps and outline a plan to conquer them.
Yeah.
You navigate these complex psychological white spaces with absolute precision, and it pays off. You receive the call. You get the offer. You negotiate your salary. You sign the employment contract, and you have an official start date set for, let's say, 3 weeks from Monday.
The golden moment.
The tension just evaporates. You did it.
Yeah.
But according to the data from College Recruiter, this exact moment of victory is where candidates commit the most baffling, destructive error of the entire journey.
It is the most counterintuitive phase of the process to fail in because the heavy lifting of the job search is theoretically finished.
Right.
You won. The candidate feels like they have crossed the finish line. But the collateral damage caused during this specific window can be absolutely catastrophic to their long-term success at the company.
This brings us to the phenomenon of the Post-Acceptance Disappearing Act. You've signed the dotted line, the legalities are handled, and what is the standard candidate behavior? Total radio silence. They ghost the employer entirely.
Completely vanish.
They treat the period between signing and starting as an absolute, impenetrable vacation from all professional communication.
The candidate effectively vanishes into the ether. And to understand the sheer panic this induces, we have to flip the perspective again and look at the intense psychological pressure the employer is under during this specific window.
Farouk Muzaffar speaks to this directly again, and his tone here conveys a lot of underlying frustration. He says, and I quote, "Expectancy of the position shouldn't be the only reason someone starts communicating with me. I find it strange when some of my candidates do not reach out or communicate at all until their first day. The contract signing shouldn't be the only indication of a commitment to the position."
What Muzaffar is describing is a severe case of corporate buyer's remorse.
Buyer's remorse.
Yes. We have to recognize the massive machinery that grinds to a halt when an offer is accepted. The company stops interviewing all the backup candidates. They freeze the recruitment budget. But more importantly, the hiring manager is spending their own political capital.
That's a crucial point, because the hiring manager had to sit in a room with their director or their VP and actively vouch for this person. They essentially said, I stake my reputation on this candidate being the solution to our problems.
Precisely. The manager's credibility is now inextricably linked to the candidate's arrival and their subsequent performance. When that candidate signs the paper and then completely disappears for 3 or 4 weeks, it creates a massive information vacuum.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Especially in a corporate environment. An information vacuum is immediately filled with anxiety. The manager starts to spiral. Did they accept a counteroffer from their current employer? Are they using our signed contract to shop around for a higher salary elsewhere?
Did I misread their enthusiasm?
Are they going to no-show on Monday morning? It is a terrifying 3 weeks for a manager.
But I have to pause here and look at this from the candidate's perspective, though.
Yeah.
Really defend the listener here. If I'm a professional who just wrapped up a grueling, month-long job search while working my previous stressful job, and I finally have a 3-week gap before I start the new role, why should I be thinking about the new company?
It's a fair question.
I mean, I am not on their payroll yet. Isn't it completely necessary from a mental health perspective to totally unplug, maybe take a trip, and decompress so I don't walk into day one already burnt out? You can't honestly expect someone to act like an active employee when they aren't drawing a salary yet.
It is a vital objection, and the need to decompress is very real. Burnout is a massive liability. No executive in this text is suggesting that a candidate should forfeit their transition time. But we have to define what working actually means in the context of this specific white space.
Okay, so it doesn't mean doing actual tasks.
No. George Fironoff provides the critical distinction here. He's not advocating for free labor. He states that the real error is assuming a passive position.
Assuming a passive position. Let's unpack the mechanics of what that actually looks like.
A passive position is an attitude of complete surrender. It's the mindset of, I will not dedicate a single neuron to this company until my alarm clock goes off at 7 a.m. on my start date, at which point I expect the company to spoon-feed me my responsibilities.
Got it.
Fironoff suggests that the antidote to the passive position is simple mental engagement. He advises candidates to prepare and ask relevant questions to familiarize themselves with the role.
So it's not about logging into their systems and building out quarterly projections on a Sunday night.
Definitely not.
It's about sending a message halfway through the waiting period that says something like, hey, well, I'm enjoying some downtime before the start date. Are there any specific industry reports, internal newsletters, or software documentation you recommend I look over casually so I can hit the ground running with context?
Yes. And the effort required to send that email is perhaps 3 minutes. The effort to lightly read a report over coffee on a Tuesday morning might be an hour total across 3 weeks. It is not a violation of your personal time.
But the signal it sends is huge.
The psychological signal it sends to the anxious hiring manager is profound. It serves as a localized dose of reassurance. It says, I am still here. My intent has not wavered. Your political capital is safe with me. It entirely eradicates their buyer's remorse.
And Stephen Liu from Pin.com, he offers a strategy for this phase that is even more tactical and requires even less effort, but yields massive results. He argues that between the offer and the start date, the biggest error is simply dropping off the radar.
Right.
His solution is to send a very quick, practical note to confirm logistics.
It is a masterpiece of low-friction engagement. An email a few days before you start asking about parking protocols, or confirming the office dress code, or simply verifying the arrival time and who to ask for at the front desk.
It sounds almost too mundane to matter. Like, why is asking about parking an executive-level strategy?
It's all about timing and visibility. Lou points out that this seemingly mundane note keeps your name actively circulating in their inbox at the exact moment the team is deciding your initial fate.
Wait, deciding your fate before you start?
Yes. What candidates don't see is that the week before they start, the internal team is having a series of operational meetings about them. The manager is looking at the workload and deciding who is going to mentor this person. Do we give them a piece of the high-stakes Q3 launch, or do we stick them on legacy data entry until we figure out if they're reliable?
Oh, that is fascinating. The candidate assumes the job starts on Monday, but the narrative of their first month is actually being written and finalized on the Thursday before they arrive.
Exactly. If you are a ghost, if they haven't heard a peep from you since you signed the contract, they are naturally going to hedge their bets.
They'll play it safe.
They will assign you the safest, most tedious entry-level tasks because they have zero read on your current energy level or commitment. You will spend your first month bored and trying to dig your way out of a deficit of trust.
But if you've sent that logistics note,
if you've demonstrated that you are organized and actively anticipating your arrival, the team's confidence in you spikes. They are far more likely to integrate you into meaningful, high-visibility projects immediately.
You are actively managing your own integration. You are soothing their anxiety and ensuring that when your wheels touch down on the runway, you are already moving at speed.
You're not starting from zero.
And that refusal to fade into the white space, it sets up the final and without a doubt, the most critical maneuver you have to execute before your official first day. This is a specific conversation that dictates the trajectory of your entire first year.
Yes. This is the moment where we move beyond proving enthusiasm and move directly into the mechanics of engineering your own operational success.
So this brings us to the final phase of our deep dive, erasing behavioral friction in the first 90 days. We are looking at the critical transition from the pre-start white space into the reality of the probation period.
The danger zone.
Truly. The overarching fatal mistake here is a failure to align expectations with your direct manager before the work begins, which creates a breeding ground for dangerous assumptions. To understand this, we look at the insights of Melanie Boone, PhD. She is a business psychologist and the CEO at Boone Management Group.
And having a business psychologist analyze this phase is absolutely vital, because the previous executives were discussing professional etiquette and intent, Dr. Boone is dissecting the hidden mechanics of human behavior operating within a complex corporate system.
Right.
She identifies that new hires, regardless of their seniority, walk through the doors on day one and blindly make 3 highly destructive assumptions.
She categorizes them very specifically. New hires assume role priorities, they assume decision authority, and they assume success metrics. And they do all of this internally without ever initiating a clear, explicit conversation with leadership.
It's all happening in their head.
Exactly. So let's break these down one by one, because guessing these elements is a recipe for a spectacular collision. Let's start with the assumption of role priorities.
Well, when a candidate accepts a job, their understanding of the role is usually based on a bulleted list of 10 to 15 responsibilities, right?
A job description.
Yeah, written by a recruiter 6 months ago. The new hire sits down on day one and assumes all 15 bullets carry equal weighted importance. Or, even more dangerously, they subconsciously cherry-pick the 3 bullets they personally enjoy doing the most and elevate those to their top priority.
Let's put this in a scenario. Imagine a mid-level marketing manager gets hired. The job description includes high-level strategy, managing vendor relationships, and overseeing the social media output. The new hire loves the creative side, right? So they spend 80% of their first month intensely focused on directing a brilliant series of promotional videos for social media. They feel incredibly productive.
But because they never had the alignment conversation, they are completely unaware of the hidden political reality.
What's the reality?
The hiring manager is under immense pressure from the CFO to slash the marketing department's vendor spend by 20% by the end of the quarter. The manager hired this person specifically to audit those vendor contracts and negotiate better rates. The social media videos, while nice, are practically irrelevant to the manager's current crisis.
Oh, man. So the new hire is working 60 hours a week, producing objectively great work, but they are rapidly failing in the eyes of their manager because their priorities are completely divorced from the team's actual needs.
Exactly.
What about Dr. Boone's second point, assuming decision authority? What happens when a new hire misjudges their own power?
This assumption triggers massive political fallout, particularly for experienced professionals stepping into a new corporate culture. Let's say a senior project manager joins a new tech firm. In their previous company, they had total autonomy to approve any departmental expense under $5,000.
So they assume this authority just naturally transfers.
Right. During their second week, a vital software license expires, so they quickly authorize a $2,000 renewal on the corporate card to keep the team moving. They think they're demonstrating proactive leadership.
But the reality of this new company is that they have a rigid, deeply bureaucratic procurement culture where absolutely any software spend, down to a $10 subscription, requires explicit sign-off from the VP of IT to ensure compliance.
Instantly, the new hire has transformed from a proactive leader into a rogue, uncontrollable employee who blatantly ignores protocol. They have created a compliance nightmare for their manager in week 2.
And the inverse is equally damaging, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. A new hire might assume they have zero decision authority, and they end up paralyzing their own workflow by pinging their manager for approval on every trivial, low-stakes email, making them look paralyzed, unconfident, and totally needy. You have to locate the exact position of the guardrails.
That brings us to Dr. Boone's third dangerous assumption, assuming success metrics, basically guessing what good actually looks like to the person grading your performance.
This is the most insidious assumption because it governs how your entire first 90-day review will be written. How does your specific manager measure value? Imagine a newly hired sales executive. They assume success is defined purely by call volume and aggression, so they blitz through hundreds of cold calls a week, creating this chaotic frenzy of activity.
But the manager's philosophy is entirely different. Let's say the manager only cares about the conversion rate of high-margin enterprise-level clients, which requires deep research, relationship building, and immense patience.
The employee is optimizing for speed, while the manager is evaluating based on precision. They're playing 2 entirely different sports on the exact same field. They will collide.
And Dr. Boone has coined a brilliant, evocative term for the result of all these misaligned assumptions. She calls it behavioral friction.
Behavioral friction, it is a flawless descriptor of the corporate reality.
It really is.
If we look at friction in the physical world, in mechanical engineering, friction is resistance. It is a force that actively opposes forward motion. It generates unnecessary heat, it drains energy from the system, and over time, it causes irreversible wear and tear on the machine.
Think about it like trying to play a high-stakes competitive sport without ever asking the referee how the points are actually scored.
I love that analogy.
Right? You might be running incredibly fast, you are sweating, you are playing your absolute heart out, but you are running out of bounds. You are throwing the ball into the opponent's net. Every single action you take, no matter how well-intentioned, creates a tiny bit of drag on the team. That is behavioral friction.
And over the course of the critical first 90 days, that compounded friction slows down your performance metrics. But more dangerously, it damages your emerging narrative.
How the team talks about you.
Exactly. The manager sits back and thinks, well, they are certainly a hard worker, but they just don't get how we do things here. Once that narrative of incompetence or misalignment sets in, it requires a monumental effort to reverse.
So the multi-million-dollar question is, how do we erase this behavioral friction before the wear and tear begins? What is Dr. Boone's actionable solution?
The solution relies on leveraging the white space one final time. Dr. Boone advises scheduling a highly structured, focused discussion specifically dedicated to clarifying priorities, authority, and the 90-day metrics. And the crucial detail is the timing. This conversation must happen before the start date, or the absolute latest, the very first hour of day one.
Before the start date. It ties perfectly back to George Fioranov's advice about not taking a passive position.
Exactly. You utilize that logistics email we discussed earlier to set the stage. You write, I am incredibly excited to officially join the team next Monday. To ensure I hit the ground running and align perfectly with your immediate needs, could we schedule a brief 20-minute call this Thursday or make it the first item on our agenda Monday morning, strictly to map out my top 3 priorities and define exactly how we will measure success for my first 90 days?
Put yourself in the shoes of a stressed-out director receiving that email. The wave of relief would be palpable. You instantly know you haven't just hired an employee, you have hired a strategic partner who takes absolute ownership of their own integration.
By initiating that conversation, you remove the guesswork entirely. You eliminate the assumptions. You define the guardrails. The gears of the relationship are oiled before the machine is ever turned on, allowing you to accelerate down the reputation runway with absolutely zero drag.
We have covered an immense amount of psychological ground today, dissecting these insights from College Recruiter. And when we pull back and look at the vast landscape of the job search, the pattern is undeniable.
If we synthesize the entire journey, from navigating the initial application void, to executing the 24-hour differentiator, to treating the follow-up like a movie sequel, bravely addressing the interview gaps, refusing to ghost after signing, and finally, systematically eliminating behavioral friction, the fundamental truth is exposed.
Success in your career transition is not dictated by the milestones. The milestones, the perfectly formatted resume, the practiced interview answers, the signed contract, those are merely the table stakes. They just get you in the building.
Every single person in the final round of a job search has successfully hit the milestones. The milestones do not differentiate you anymore.
What secures the offer and what guarantees your survival and ascension in the crucial first year is how you manage the spaces in between.
It is a continuous, highly intentional practice of building trust in the white space. It's demonstrating that you possess the empathy to understand the anxieties of the human beings on the other side of the hiring table. It is anticipating their needs and proving your maturity when you aren't strictly required to perform.
The white space is the only place where you can prove you are a complex, proactive human being and not just a resume-generating algorithm. And so, to you, the listener, the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive is a massive transfer of power.
It really is empowering.
This reputation runway is not something that happens to you. It is entirely within your control. The job search often feels like you are a passive participant waiting for judgment, but you aren't. By refusing to go silent in these critical moments, you are actively curating your professional identity. You are teaching the company how to value you before you even sit at your desk.
It is the ultimate psychological pivot. You transition from being a candidate hoping for a chance to being a professional consultant offering a partnership.
It changes everything. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought.
Oh, this is good.
We spent this entire hour analyzing how the white space is a transparent window for the employer to evaluate your true character. But if the white space is where the masks come off and the real evaluation happens, well, it raises a deeply fascinating question. Is the white space also the only place where you can truly figure out who the employer is?
That is a phenomenal point. The white space acts as a two-way mirror.
Think about the mechanics of that. If you send that carefully crafted, highly specific follow-up note offering a new idea, Or if you ask to schedule a brief call to clarify those 90-day success metrics so you can align with their goals. And the company responds with pure annoyance.
Red flag.
What if they completely ignore your initiative? Or worse, what if a manager tells you, just show up on Monday, we'll figure it out eventually, dismissing your desire for clarity?
Then they haven't just rejected your email. They have handed you the blueprint of their internal corporate culture. They have revealed that they operate on chaos, that they do not value proactive communication, and that leadership lacks any real strategic vision.
Exactly. Maybe their annoyance is the most valuable piece of intelligence you will gather in your entire job search. The white space isn't just an audition for you to prove your worth to them. It might be the only unfiltered chance you get to discover if they're a deeply toxic environment before your career is legally bound to them. Food for thought as you step out and navigate the silence of your own reputation runway. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
This has been From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers, a podcast brought to you by college recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. Each episode, we dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Subscribe to this podcast for free now, so you don't miss an episode, and visit www.collegerecruiter.com to find your next great job.